Call the meeting to order. It is 4:15. Join me with a pledge to the flag, please. And let me get stand up first. Okay.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have the Selectmen's minutes from the workshop dated 5 December, of which Mr. Morgan and Mr. Freeman are both present. If one would make a motion.
I move to accept them as printed.
And do I have a second?
Yes.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I also have a Selectmen's minutes from the Selectmen's meeting dated December the 5th. Could I have a motion on those since I wasn't here?
I move to accept them as printed.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Done, thank you. I have the voucher list here for the payroll ending 12/10. Total payroll was $33,531.16 for wages, $11,330.08 for taxes. Accounts payable for 12/3 of 2/16, $108,250.86 was the batch total. And we are making the county appropriation, which is $898,756 for a total accounts payable of, under those two items, of $1,007,006.86. Total for the entire package is $1,051,868.10. I got trouble saying all those numbers. Make a motion, we approve them.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know, my checkbook don't go that high, so
Mine never has either. They're big numbers, even if you say them fast.
Mine hasn't come within half that, so no need to worry about it.
Oh, I could write a check that big.
Me too.
You just have to write it, that's all.
You like that football game the other day, they're out there getting them rubber pellets on.
Yeah.
You see that yesterday, the,
Not to change the subject, Terry, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's most important, my friend.
I'm trying to keep this a record meeting here like you did last week.
18 minutes.
Here you go.
I know what he's doing.
I have a letter here to the trustee of trust funds from the Board of Selectmen. It's a withdrawal for the Whittier Covered Bridge Expandable Trust for $2,055.40. Is to cover the Hoyle Tanner bill for the work they've done in November 2016. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
How are we on the reimbursements on that, you know? We
I
have to,
don't.
are we current on those?
Whittier Covered Bridge, we're current.
Yeah, I believe, not with the state. Brad was a little bit lax in submitting them. He was waiting until he collected enough to make it worthwhile, so I think we're still waiting on $30,000 from the state.
Okay. I have another letter here to the trustee of trust funds, and this is a withdrawal from bridge replacement and repair expendable trust. This is to the town of Ossipee. This is the White Mountain Survey Company, and this is the Valley Road Bridge, of which White Mountain Survey has been doing survey work to get this one done. And this is for $150. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I have an abatement here. It's on 130 Gretchen Road. It says, reason for the abatement, this property was sold prior to the second tax bill going out, so we need to abate a portion of this bill in order to tax the proper owner for the remainder of the bill. So this abatement is for $78.03. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then this one here is a supplemental warrant, same property, so that they can properly tax the right person. Again, 130 Gretchen Road, $78.03, same
Second.
amount.
Yep.
Make a motion, we approve it.
Second it?
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. These kind of go together. One is to give the right person the credit and give the other person the bill to actually pay it. I have an intent to cut timber, map 80, lot 1, Route 16B. Barry Rollins is the owner. Sean McDonald, Canterbury Timber Company is the cutter. No taxes have been paid, and there's no cemetery. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm going to abstain because I work there, so,
Okay.
but that was my.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Have a timber tax warrant here. It goes to the tax collector, Kelly Scan. Excuse me. In the name of the state of New Hampshire, you're hereby directed to collect the yield taxes in the list herewith committed to you, amounting to the sum of $51.75. Make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Have a letter here. We have a ongoing disagreement between land values that our assessor has put on. We have a landowner, Mr. Buchanan, who's come in and he wants to negotiate the taxes on his property. Our assessor he's forwarding a settlement offer by Mr. Buchanan. As you can see, he is willing to settle this with no further action until the next reval year if you agree to reduce the assessment of his property by $74,050. Mr. Buchanan's reason...
574 or 274?
Excuse me, 274, I'm sorry. $274,050. Mr. Buchanan's reason is the revised proposal is roughly halfway between his original proposal and the town's revised assessment. Currently, the assessed value has been reduced to $88,100 via abatements and remains at that value.
I'll move it for the sake of discussion.
Second?
Second.
All discussion.
We've had this discussion before on these, and quite frankly, I'm not in favor of this settlement. Either our values are correct and defensible, or they're not. And I would like to know either way. Every other person has been assessed by our assessor using X for a criteria, including this property. If we simply, because they threatened to take us to court, lower this gentleman's value, what about all those other people out there?
That's right.
Who were assessed using the exact same criteria? If in fact this goes to the Board of Land and Tax Appeals and they find that our values is off, I think we need to know that too. We hand out abatements when they are justified because of changes to the property. This isn't a change to the property. This is a guy saying, I don't think my property is worth as much as you're saying it's worth. And our assessor says that it is. I think it needs to be decided by the Board of Land and Tax Appeals or by court. But I think we do a disservice to every other taxpayer in town if we enter into that settlement. And it's not a lot of money. It's not, it really isn't. The difference of values
$14,000.
is $14,000 times the tax rate. You're only talking to, you're not talking about a lot of money, but I still think it's an issue of fairness. If we have assessed now, we just got finished with the townwide assessment. If we have assessed everybody else using that criteria, why should we change it for one person?
That's right.
I don't think we should.
I have the exact same feeling. Either our assessed values are defensible or they're not. Therefore,
And I think it's time that he stands up to his job and does it.
so I'll make a motion that we not approve this.
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm just not gonna sign it, Ellen, that's all, okay?
That's fine.
I have a petition here signed by supposedly 27 people. I don't know if you've checked them to make sure that
They have been checked by the town clerk.
and they are accurate.
Yeah, and it's been forwarded to.
This is
the,
a petition.
board.
It says, "We, as registered voters of the town of Ossipee, do hereby request that the selectmen at town meeting present the following. Are you in favor of the adoption of RSA 674-71, 674-72, and 674-73, the accessory dwelling unit, ADU? RSA 674 shall be effective, RSA 674 shall be effective June 1, 2017. The ADUs shall comply with all sections of the Ossipee zoning ordinance." It's been submitted to us for petition, therefore,
And forwarded to the planning board. They'll schedule the public hearings.
okay. So this is information only to all concerned. Okay.
I did, just real briefly, I signed that. I was asked to, and I had no problem doing it. The accessory dwelling is something that I have believed in for a long time. Under our current ordinance, as an example, if you have an attached garage to your house, you can have an accessory dwelling unit in the upstairs. But if it's a detached garage, you can't. Now, that makes no more sense than nothing. I think more and more, because of the economy, I think that you're gonna find more extended families trying to stay together. There's also the issue of our older folks who, they might have an available apartment above their garage that they could rent out and help them financially. A lot of things, but anyway, because the towns in general had not done enough with this, the legislature passed this law. Effective that date, accessory dwelling units have to be allowed. The question is whether or not the planning board can play games with which portions of that RSA they adopt. I quite frankly submit you can't.
But can I follow up on that?
Sure.
We had a motion on the floor at a planning board meeting to adopt RSA 674, 71, 72, and 73. And the people that signed the petition voted against it.
That I don't know, but anyway, I do hope that this is passed in its entirety, because quite frankly, even if town meeting voted this down, I think in June 1, accessory dwelling units have to be allowed. So,
This is kind of.
it may be redundant, but.
I just sit here and go, I don't understand this, but that's okay, we have it, it can be a warrant article. Information to us, the build-out study, which was something that was in the town meeting last year, was going to be Green Mountain Conservation, was going to be somewhat spearheading it, and they wanted extra money from the town and conservation group. We voted down at town meeting not to do it. This is a letter from the Danhole Pond Watershed Trust, who is willing to do that build-out study. According to this letter, they're willing to raise the money, contract it, and complete the contract. I guess the question comes down to, can it legally be done that way? And I don't know if it needs to go to the attorney.
I don't think it does. I think it can be done that way. However, because it is something of value, I think that we, as Board of Selectmen, has to have a public hearing and then a legal vote to accept the donation. I do not believe in any way, shape, or form that the planning board can proceed without that. Because they're not doing, it's not like this group, if you read the letter, they're not doing the build-out study for themselves and then choosing to share the results with the town. They're only doing it because they want the town to incorporate that in the reformulation of its master plan. So, and we can have that debate, we can have that, but in the interest of transparency, this group in particular has, and I presume, will continue to try to put a lot of land in the town of Ossipee in conservation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they're gonna be going before the Conservation Commission, they're gonna be going before the planning board, hell, they may be in here looking for us to accept property. In the issue of transparency, this should only be done through a public hearing. I think to do it otherwise, at least appears to be trying to end run the voters at last town meeting. Now, I didn't support it last year for a bunch of reasons. First and foremost was they came in after our budget was already set and everything else. So that was certainly a part of it. I wasn't in favor of spending $6,000 in Ossipee tax money for a study which, you can study and study and study and study, and I don't know that they produce much. And I think we had that conversation as well. This is a different story. This is a group willing to pay for it, but I still believe it should have a public hearing, and then we should vote to accept it. One of the things that I'd want to know, and I think in the issue of transparency should be known, is who is this organization? Who's in it? Call me old-fashioned and conservative, but if I'm going to get in bed with somebody, I'd like to know the name. So I just think that it ought to be.
Do I have a motion to?
I make a motion that we set a public hearing for the acceptance of a gift. And I think we have to have one or two. One, I believe.
I believe it's one.
And then there's a statutory limit of time between the hearing and when we have to vote to either say yes or no. But I'll vote we set a hearing, acceptance of gift.
We vote to have a hearing, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Ellen, you got that?
I do.
One more thing for you to do.
Sure thing.
Before you have the baby. Put that baby on hold.
Okay.
I got two more.
Have a purchase order request here. It actually comes from Ellen. 3 each HP Elite desktops.
Yes.
Okay, it's going to be for a total of $2,487.
Computers.
Computers.
Yep.
CPUs.
We actually, this week we lost the general assistance computer. The complete power module is gone in it, so
They're not
we're down
gonna
one
fix it.
computer. We have 2 more that are running XP and no longer supported. So as much as I was trying to hold off until next year, it's inevitable that we need them immediately.
There's a total of 3. 1 goes to the welfare office, 1 is for public, and 1 is for Jesse. I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. I have another purchase order here, again, put out by our town administrator. I assume these are our first aid kits?
Those are the vehicle first aid kits for each vehicle, and also a new eye wash station for the highway garage, because the one that they have down there, there's a crack in it, and in order to repair it, it's gonna
Probably
be more
can't.
feasible to purchase a new one, so I rolled it all into one.
And this is to the Cintas
Yes.
Corporation?
And they've taken over for Z Medical.
For Z
which is-
Medical, okay. And this is for a total of $2,524.98. I make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Highway Department work log, anybody that's interested is here. I did read the letter that came in, this is something that's been on our agenda from the school on the stabilization dollars that we've talked about on our agenda. It's from Superintendent of Schools. Really don't have, I do have some information on the stabilization dollars, but probably not much different than what the Board of Selectmen has. Stabilization dollars are being phased out per the decision made by the New Hampshire legislature. There will be an impact on the district state revenue and thus an impact on the budget. This is part of a continuing and disappointing shift of the state's responsibility for schools to the local level. With the stabilization dollars, Ossopee's projected tax rate would have been 6 cents lower than it is for the fiscal year 2018. So it's something, and it says, this will likely be a topic with the legislator again this year. Honestly, it is every year, and the current formula will likely change again. So it is not really useful to project out very far beyond next year. If any other information of interest comes my way, I'll be glad to share it with the board, and that's from the Superintendent of Schools, Kathy Cuddy-Burke. I don't know if that really answers that question, but there's not much we can do
Well,
about
it does. I mean, well, my question was, what impact would that have on us? And they're saying in 2018,
Fiscal year, yeah, about 6
it would
cents.
affect 6 cents of us.
I assume that's coming in under the state section, right? The state education fund, the 6 cents would be under the state education.
No, what they're saying is that the town of Ossopee's tax rate is going to be 6 cents higher as a result of the
Our-
reduction of state
Our
funds.
tax rate or our share that we get charged from the state education fund?
If the way I read it was, it says Ossopee's tax rate would have been 6 cents lower for fiscal year 2018 if not for the withdrawal of those state funds. So it looks like it's going to impact us by 6 cents per thousand. Did I read, I mean, I read it twice.
I think it's just based on the state education or the local education portion.
Anyway, we pay more.
Yes.
Yeah.
To make it short and sweet.
Yes.
I have a letter here from the executive counselor, Mr. Kenny. Anybody interested in a copy of it is certainly welcome to contact the office and get it. I have a letter here from Charter Communication on cable. I also have, excuse me, Ossipee Aggregates, a letter on their proposal for what they're doing for excavation of dirt, land, acreage, This is strictly a copy to us for information. This is, again, controlled by the planning board and state DRA, people that control the gravel pits. Anybody interested in more information, you're welcome to it. That concludes the red folder. I'm taking too long tonight.
Thank you, went way over.
This is all the public input.
Old business, the intersection of Route 28, 171. Bob?
We had a meeting down in Concord. I thought it went very good. I still, after talking ahead, I guess I don't believe they're gonna do anything real soon. According to Jeb Bradley, he asked them how quick they could get things done. I thought it would probably go a little quicker than what it's probably gonna go, huh?
Yeah, Ed, your input on it. You were there.
First, it was good that we actually were able to pull together a meeting with DOT. That was the first hurdle. I think the main concern was, I think, to do something long-term and short-term. Short-term, the only thing I heard was that they were going to reduce the speed limit as you enter the intersection area. Long-term, they did talk about the cost of a roundabout. They talked about other configurations, other devices that could be added to the intersection. I had mentioned that DOT apparently must need a better process when there's an intersection that has inputs on it that they're not accounting for. Like, if they're not accounting for the fact that you have a nursing home up there, you have a jail, you have other businesses or entities up around the intersection that are inputting on the intersection, people who are upset, or you come out of the nursing home, you got a family member up there, you're coming out of jail, courtroom, it's all not being accounted for, obviously. They were dead set against spending any money on light. They said it's unwarranted. They basically said through their studies, the light isn't or may not give you the effect you wanted. Long term, okay, but we need to do something short term. So the only short term things I heard was the signage for the speed going down, continued patrols, and after that, possible mechanisms like this mechanism that you go over a wire and it makes a light flash telling you that you're entering an intersection or that there's a stop ahead.
Something they've never used before.
Right.
What
All
about,
new.
what about, I mean, and I should have mentioned this, Bob, before you went down there. Can't they at least, and this doesn't cost them anything, they have them in stock, I'm sure. If they installed a couple of more stop ahead signs on 171, because if you think about the dynamics of both of these most recent fatals, it was somebody who didn't, they never stopped. They never knew the intersection was there. They simply blew it. You don't have great visibility coming out of Courthouse Square. I mean, for those of us who are born and raised here, it's a whole different scenario. If you try to put yourself in the car of a stranger, there's not great visibility when you come out of the old Courthouse Square towards Route 28. Yeah, the stop sign's there, but it's at the very end. If they put in a couple of more stop ahead signs, even anything that might help alert people to the fact that there's an intersection ahead.
We did mention that, and one of his things he said was, well, there's enough signage there now.
Well, it's not.
There's signs here, there's signs
See,
there, there's signs here.
This is an old glass half empty, half full argument. How can you possibly say there's enough signage there if people are still blowing through the stop sign? These weren't, this is a second elderly couple. They aren't criminals. They weren't out trying to outrun the police and blew a stop sign. They weren't trying to beat traffic.
One of the things.
How can you say it's all right if they're still going through it?
One of the things that used to exist down there was a stop sign in the center of the diamond coming from the Ossipee Village area. And I've sat in 2 or 3 meetings now up here with DOT and a fire chief of Ossipee Connor, who has repeatedly asked for at least that stop sign to get put back.
How bold do you want to be? Why don't we put the damn signs down there?
Well, I
Let them
mentioned-
come take it down.
Well, listen, I mentioned that. I
You
said,
did.
quote, I said, the government's moving too slow. I said, you want to think about this long term, fine. Let's start that process. But what can you do now? And getting them to say anything now it was only the state police and the DOT that said changing the road signs, the speed. That was it. That's all I got out of them. All those ideas are fine, but there doesn't seem to be a process to interrupt the national standards at all. And that's what I said, there has to be a method, because there's obviously things you're not accounting for in that. In every state, there's always these special intersections that always seem to have this inherent problem. This is one of those intersections, but there's no mechanism to address them separately.
There's not only a mechanism, but this very intersection, one of the things that I lobbied for years was a stinking sign on 28. Once you come off Route 16, check your blinker. Argued for years. The answer I finally got, and this was after years, it's not an approved sign.
It's not under
I
the
said-
national standards.
I said, okay, what is the process to get a sign approved? Never got an answer.
You can't, because it's Congress. The Federal Highway Act and the national standards is
You
what
know what I
controls
mean?
it.
So we don't have one, we agree you need one, but we don't know how to get one.
You know, I guess I'm a little,
I'll be honest with you, I don't have any opposition whatsoever. I am sure we have some extra stop signs in our highway strip. I am sure we have some stop ahead signs, and I have absolutely no problem whatsoever spending a few Ossipee tax dollars to help protect people down there and putting out some extra signs. What are they gonna do? They're gonna give us hell?
you know, I guess I was a little naive thinking that when they were talking about, especially when Senator Bradley was saying, you know, how quick can we do this? You know, to get the money, I'm just informed by Ed, is a little, hell of a lot longer than I thought it was gonna be, maybe years. But the way they talked down there, when I left there, I felt pretty good, I really did, that something was gonna be done in a reasonable amount of time. But,
Well, it
after talking
depends
to
on what your
Ed,
definition of reasonable is.
Yeah,
For the state, reasonable may be, I mean, let's just say, Senator, sorry to interrupt you. The Senator Bradley said possible legislation, LSR, legislative service request, to put in into the capital budget, some more funding to do something. But that means it has to go through the legislature, through committee, it has to go out on the House floor. So you're still talking about, you know,
Yeah.
2017
Yeah.
at the minimum. By
Right.
the time that money gets funneled through all the right.
And then we're gonna do, just like we did with this, with what we've been going through with the covered bridge now for how many years?
Yeah.
And then once you get the money
Yeah.
approved, then you gotta go through all of their permitting and plans, and you know.
I have to tell you, I guess I'm shocked about, you know, the way they talked and the way things are really gonna be done, I guess.
It's only eventually.
Because I thought maybe, you know, within the next few months, we'd be hearing they're gonna do something.
The next few months would be the speed signs.
Yeah.
There's no way.
I was
they're
told
gonna-
they're not even gonna do that.
I didn't hear that.
They said, when I don't know the gentleman's name, I'm bad with names anyway. When we were out in the hallway, when we were leaving, Lino was with him, and he said that the signs are a dead thing. He said, you're not gonna get any more signs up there anymore. I mean, the speed limit knocked down.
I didn't hear that. I heard.
Because if you heard the colonel from the state police, he said, no matter what you put out there, if you put a 40-mile-an-hour sign, they're gonna do 50. If you put a 50-mile-an-hour sign, they're gonna do 60.
There's a certain amount of truth in that, but it also gives you an enforceable limit.
But the way I took it to be, and I guess I'm naive, I guess, that things are gonna be done a little quicker than what Ed's explained to me tonight.
Well, a little quicker is what? It's still going to be
Yeah,
next year. I mean,
yeah.
you can't break the earth now and put cement in it.
I even asked them in front of everybody, you were there, Ed, I asked them to put off the bridges and fix our intersection.
I did want to mention one thing, is I think we all agree that spending $300,000 to do the lane is a waste of
It's a
money.
waste of money.
My idea is, or my concern is, how do we make sure that they've heard that? Where do we go? What committee do we go to? What board do we talk to tell them we don't want you to spend that money on that
The
project?
problem is, Ed, and I agree with you, there's no, I don't think you'll find anybody who thinks what they have proposed down there is actually going to fix the problem that's in that intersection. Nobody. The problem is, historically, my dealing with state government, and I almost got the sense right in here that they were trying to box us in to the point where we either agree to that or they do nothing.
Yeah, that's true.
Nothing should never be an option. But I think in all sincerity, and I felt that when they were right here doing that hearing, They were looking for us to get on board. And that's why I came with the caveat of saying, I'm glad you're doing something, but I do not believe this is going to fix the overall problem.
But in my mind, what's gonna happen here is they're gonna say, okay, we gave you that, but it's not helping. But we gave you that, so you got it. Now you're good for another 25 years.
I think the downside is if you turn around and say, we don't want it, then they turn around and say, we tried to fix it, but you wouldn't let us fix it.
Now
it's your fault.
And we'll spend the money somewhere
That's
else.
correct.
But I thought we did a good job telling them that that wasn't gonna fix
I
it.
wish I hear exactly what you're saying, and I don't like the thoughts of wasting $300,000. I'd rather the $300,000 went toward an actual fix.
Did you hear what he said though, when we asked him, who can change it? Who can change that? And he's going, well, you know, this, that. And then Jeff Bradley said to him, who can change it? He goes, well, I could change it. So now that's when I jumped up and said, you don't want to change it.
All right.
They don't want to establish precedents.
No.
If they do, then every intersection that somebody perceives there's a problem will be on their doorstep, and it will cost
And
the
I
state a lot
get
of
that.
money.
The problem is the very premise of what you're just saying. It's not a perception here in this intersection. There is ample data, hard facts on the number of accidents, the number of people hurt, and the number of fatalities. That's not presumptive. The problem that I see with the state, and it's like this issue with the sign, they get so locked in to these criteria. I agree with them. I don't have a problem with their numbers. I'm not even doubting that the traffic counts there don't meet this quote-unquote national standard. I get that. But when you have an intersection such as this that has such a documented history, including what, 7 accidents now since they did the safety study. That's not presumption. And to be honest with you, if they have other intersections in the state of New Hampshire with that many accidents, they ought to be friggin' fixing them too.
It's not the fact that they only want to go back 10 years, but this has been continuous for 50 years. So there's 50 years worth of data down there, and 40 years they don't want to look at. That's what it really comes down to.
If they get another intersection in the state of New Hampshire that has that many serious accidents, in all due respect, they ought to be fixing them. They ought to be fixing those too.
Well, we need to explore more of any other mechanism that's available
put up
to
some
change
signs?
the process.
Okay,
Yeah, I would,
What I'd like to do is I'd like to have Brad
take a look at it.
take a look at it, maybe talk with the fire chief down there. Bob, you've been involved down there, and
Yeah.
get with.
yeah.
I don't have a problem with the world putting up some additional signs. I don't care if it is a
I
state
don't
road.
either.
And if they want to
Yeah.
slap our fingers for it later, let them do
And
it.
I'd also just like to add, while we're here, what a nice job Joe Duchesne put together, the analysis of the accidents, people hurt. What a great job it was. He was even commended by the state police, what an awesome job it was. And he ended up giving that to Senator Bradley so he could look at it. Well, what a nice job he did putting it together.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah. We can have Brad look at it and see what he can do,
Well, you
especially
know.
coming from the Ossipee Village more than anything, but
More than
actually,
anything.
both sides of 171 need it.
But most of the fatalities
It's a
that I'm
great
thinking
idea.
about were people coming out of Ossipee Village.
That's correct.
Great idea.
What
What
do
are
they do?
they gonna do, take them up?
Okay, we talked about loss of education stabilization grant funds. Hazardous buildings, still waiting for court date. Village Corner Road, still waiting for court date.
Correct.
Recreation Committee, working,
2 out of 3.
2 out of
Confirmed.
3. Budget review for water sewer,
Still in process.
still in process. And we're not ready for Lakes Region Humane Society Animal Shelter Agreement. That's gone back to them with changes to concur on and come back up to us.
Correct.
Any other old business? Make me
No.
drink this one.
He is, friend. You trying to make it drag it
Any old business?
on. No, I
review?
don't, sir.
Any new business?
No.
No.
Any new business? Any public input? Don't look so grumpy, Connie.
He can't help it. That's his natural look.
That's his natural
It
look.
is.
Any other public input? Ed?
Dragging it on, Ed.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have 10 more minutes and keep it an hour. The public hearing for the build-out study. There's the other concerning issues with that issue is even though you are going to be voting, if you have a public hearing and you vote to accept the donation or the thing of value to do this, it really has to be made clear of what the intent of the original warrant article was. Was it only a vote because they didn't want to spend the money, or were there other concerns about the build-out study itself? I had mentioned in the planning board, for transparency and fairness, is the public hearing should talk about those things. Because if there are people in town that didn't care if it was the money or not, that there was something else about it, then that should be discussed. The other issue is, this reminds me of towns accepting grants. There's never any grant review. They said it was a gift, a donation, they're not asking for anything, etc. It is my observation that people do not give away anything. There's always a reason why they're giving you something, because they want something in return. What that is could be anything. That needs to be discussed. FB Environmental. FB Environmental out of Portsmouth said that they're able to get I believe, a $4,000 grant to help fund this with Dan Hole Pond. Okay. What do we know about FB Environmental? What agreement did they sign to get that money? This is a contract, it is, because it's a grant. So if they got money from the state, what is the state asking FB Environmental to do? You should know that, because you're accepting a donation of money or a thing of value to do something. You can't tell me that they're going to be able to get $4,000 and then not build something into the build-out study that they agreed to. I'm just saying that you need to know what that agreement is. If Dan Hole Pond has gathered money from their membership, the public deserves to know who's on the membership, where the money came from, and what they expect. If it's water quality, they need to say that. If it's future land conservation for water quality, they need to say that. If they had asked me advice, I would have told them that you should have came here, and you should have came into the planning board, Dan Hole Pond, and FB Environmental, and you should have explained it. Not just send a letter, a very quick letter to just speak about it, and then vote on it, and got to get done now, because that was the other thing I heard too, was it has to be done now, quick, quick, quick. Hear it in every meeting. Grant has to be accepted now, or else we're going to lose the money. That's not transparency.
No.
I want to secure the process. The people voted not to have that build-out study for numerous reasons. If you want to revisit it again, fine, but it should be done out in the public eye. That was my concern. That's my public comment.
Absolutely. There were people who didn't support it, for instance, because of Green Mountain Conservation's involvement. Who, until we know, how do you know that Green Mountain Conservation hasn't supplied the money to Dan Hole Trust to turn around and do it? All of those issues are fair questions to be asked in a public hearing. That process, we'll be advertising that there is a hearing, and for what purpose? To again, give people who may have been at town meeting or others an opportunity to come in and ask questions and be heard. That is the right way. The problem that I think that some people don't want to grasp, when you're talking about taxpayer money, taxpayer issues, building issues, the appearance of impropriety is just as damaging as impropriety itself. That's where transparency fights that. If there is a full hearing, people get the opportunity to ask those questions, and then this board agrees to accept it, fantastic, move on. But until that happens, that is the process that needs to be done. I'll say it again, I disagree with the position of some who say that they don't need this process. If you commission a study that costs $6,000 and it produces a booklet that says a study, that booklet by definition is now worth $6,000. It is an item of value that needs to have a hearing and then a vote to accept. No different than if somebody wanted to give us a $6,000 piece of land or We've had public hearings in the past, we had somebody that bought weapons for the police department. Any gift, and that is to ensure transparency and that there isn't any quid pro quo going on down the road. It needs to be done.
Ronnie?
One, after the first of the year, it's gonna cost $10,000 because the grant supposedly, quote unquote, ends December 31st. Two, your census can give you the same thing that build-up will. You've got 60% of this town is either government, churches, or current use. So that only leaves us 40%.
Those are all valid points, Connie, and I don't agree with the thing you just said. But that is specifically why there ought to be an open and fair public hearing. And then, based on those facts, the three of us were elected to be the representative and then decide. There needs to be a fair and open hearing.
We had a hell of a fight.
I watched it, thanks to,
Is it going to be worthwhile to post a public hearing if they're gonna lose their grant funding? Because I need
As
a
they're trying-
minimum of time.
Seems to me like they're trying to
We
push
Advertise
this,
it for 2 weeks.
push this,
well,
Without
one, I'm
finding out anything.
not willing, I mean, the law is the law, so that's neither here nor there. Now, if they choose to come up with $10,000, that's their business. But we're not going to circumvent law because they are under some sort of a time constraint. That's just,
You saw the meeting.
I did.
You saw what the problem was.
Yes, I did.
excuse me.
For him to even present it was a conflict of interest.
Those are issues, and those are rightful issues of a fair and open public process.
Correct.
I'll make the motion. No,
Make a motion, what?
nothing.
Any other public input?
I just wanted to follow up on something.
Go ahead.
There's a reason why we have the law the way it is. Let's say, I said this in the meeting also, let's say for instance somebody very wealthy moved into town and they didn't like the town. They wanted to make it the way they wanted it. And they just figured, well, the town doesn't have any money to do stuff, so I'm just gonna keep writing checks and I'm gonna influence by giving donations to all these different organizations to change it the way I want it. You can't do that because you have property owners and you have residents of the town. They have a right, individual right, to make choices about their property. That's why the law's there. The other issue is this data is being used for a build-out study that's going into your master plan. This is supposed to be a public thing. This is what the residents are supposed to get together to have input on it. This could have been, or it will be, a good opportunity to get the town involved in what's going to happen in the future. If there's a concern that this build-out study is going to create an issue with private property rights, well then, write a document that makes that not happen. There's ways you can still have the study, but then make sure it's not used against your private property. So it just seemed like it needed to be more open. So.
I don't want to flog this, I don't want to beat it to death, but the motivation is clear. When you have, this was proposed originally by Green Mountain Conservation. I have some issues with that organization, that aside. You now have another environmental, protection, the Daniel Watershed, who are willing to pay money. The question needs to be asked, what is the motivation of those two organizations to having this done? The skeptic in me, and I don't think this is too far off post, means that what they're attempting to do is to influence the town's zoning decisions. That's the only reason to do this build-out study, is to influence the town's zoning ordinance. I would respectfully submit that when you have environmental groups who are willing to pony up that kind of money, they're looking to affect the zoning ordinance in their direction. As Connie pointed out, 60% of the town of Ossipee. When you start adding in not just the current use, but we have thousands and thousands of acres in conservation that isn't taxed, that can't be built on, and I love that. I'm a hunter, I'm a fisherman, I love to have those open spaces. But that leaves the rest of us, and when we talk about we want businesses to come in, that's great, but you gotta have a place to put them. I don't wanna see our commercial developments restricted. I wanna see it expanded. If we really hope to actually be able to live and have our kids stay here and have a decent job, we need to expand our commercial development, not restrict it. I firmly believe the agenda is to restrict it. And I think that's sad. I think it's sad for our future.
I think you got the wrong impression. They're not gonna pay for it. They're gonna get donations from the town of Ossipee, businessmen, quote unquote, and that was in that
That's
letter.
what the letter says.
So,
We'll schedule it.
they're not gonna pay for it, Rick.
If the schedule doesn't meet their dates, so be it. We have requirements
There's a
as to
requirement by statute.
scheduling public hearings, and we have certain timeframes, and we will follow them. Any other public input? No need for non-public tonight? No.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Wow, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Wow. I was gonna yap on forever, Ed.